He's asking, ready to go.
Okay.
All right. 6 p.m. We will call the meeting to order. We'll do the reading of the district's mission statement. Our district will empower learning, energize achievement, and enhance community excellence without excuse. Are there any additional items for the agenda? Go back, see if anybody. Okay, if not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
And that's Kelly Heitkamp. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
That was Tim Johnson. And then at this, I'm assuming this is all roll call too. So Wendy, if you want to.
Yep. For the vote, Johnson,
Yes.
Hain, Kendra and him.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Kendra. Heitkamp,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Elke,
Yes.
Size,
Yes.
Burke.
Yes.
That's all.
Okay. Motion carries 7-0. Approve resolution to convert future board meetings to teleconference. I'll just make the motion to approve the resolution to convert future board meetings to teleconference. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Do you want any discussion, Kurt, on that or anything, or is
This is a model resolution from MSBA.
okay? All right. I guess we'll do the roll call again. Wendy, if you want to take over.
Sure. Hain,
Yes.
Heitkamp,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Elke,
Yes.
Size,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries 7-0. Open forum. Comments for the open forum should be mailed to me as board chair. I did not receive any. And then we have the policy there. So we'll move on to number 7. Reports, COVID-19 and distance learning update. I'll let Kurt and the rest of the admin staff take over on that.
Great, thank you. Grant Hansen and Jeremy Erler did join us, and they're going to give some updates. I'll give you some brief things. Food service, we're up to 350 or 360 meals per day. So again, when I say meals per day, that's a breakfast and lunch, and they are distributed in 2 days. So like tonight, they're distributed on Mondays and Thursdays. I don't know if I said that correctly. So tonight, they gave families, if they had 3 kids, they technically gave them 9 meals. It's a breakfast and lunch for 3 days and then for 3 kids. So it's a lot of prep work, and Sarah Myhawk and her staff have done outstanding. I've gotten some update or questions from board members just about transportation and where we are with that contract with Palmer. And I will say it's an ongoing situation. Even 5 minutes before a board meeting, I got another email from Palmer that that Matt Moline and I have been working with the third party that negotiated your contract 3 years ago with Palmer, and he does this with a lot of schools throughout the state. He's a transportation guru, Tom Watson. And so he's been heavily involved, and we do have a contract extension for next year that we're looking at as well. And so we're trying to roll it all into one. And so I think we're absolutely being fair, and they're trying to be fair as well. So I don't have a lot of details, and I don't want to throw out some misinformation, but just know we're working on that on the back end of this. We did a distance learning survey, and I don't want to get too heavy into it because I want Jeremy and Grant to talk a little bit more about it. But we did have 90 parents respond, and about 55% of our students, considering there's only grades 4 through 12, had about 265 students respond. So I'm going to pass it over to Jeremy Erler just to give you an update. And board members, you can feel free to ask questions throughout this too. Jeremy, you ready to go? Grant, are you ready to go?
I can go if you can hear me.
We can hear
Now
you.
mine's
Grant.
working.
Oh,
Yes.
now Jeremy's good. Go ahead,
Okay,
Jeremy.
Jeremy, you can start us off.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thanks to Mr. Stump for all of his guidance in this. This has been a long, tedious process. Getting through it in 8 days to create the plan that we did was outstanding. Our teachers have just been rock stars for us. They've all created a plan that seems to be working for them and their students for the most part. The surveys that Mr. Stump was talking about, I felt like we had solid results from that. 80 to 85% of the people were satisfied with how we're doing right now. Just a couple poor results throughout the whole survey. So I was happy with that. It tells us that our teachers are doing a great job. The school as a whole is doing a great job communicating with families and getting the information they need. Like Mr. Stump said, Sarah and the kitchen staff have just been rock stars through all this, getting all those meals out and getting ready. That's just been wonderful. There's a ton of families that do participate in it. And on Thursdays, we still do our backpack program for JWP students also. So they get their weekends covered also. But as far as how things are going, I think they're going as well as we can expect them to go right now. Obviously, these survey results give us something to chat about with our teachers, which I have 2 meetings a week with my teachers, Tuesday afternoon and Thursday afternoons, where we do check-ins as a whole staff, talk about what's going well, what things we need to change, and how we can make those changes happen. So I think for the most part, everything has been going about as well as we can get it to go right now. And we'll make small, subtle changes as we go in order to help out those families that are really in desperate need of more help. So, does anybody have questions for me?
Jeremy, I was wondering when you said that you got a couple of poor results. Now I'm assuming the surveys are anonymous. Are you able to rectify any of the issues that people were experiencing?
A number of the issues that we're seeing are connectivity with internet. So we're doing our best to rectify those. When I say poor results, it'd be like 1 out of 30 kids or 1 out of 30 parents that would just say, I think they're getting too much work, or something along those lines. Maybe not, some may say not enough work, but nothing major. It was like 1 out of every 30, 40 parents that did the survey for us. And there is no way to track it because it is an anonymous survey.
And if I can chime in too, I think Grant may have this as well. So we're preparing a report for our staff and for our community with the results. So one of the things that I'm guessing every parent on here will attest to as well. We have some parents saying, I wish we had more live streaming, more Google Meets, that face-to-face interaction. We have some parents on the other end saying, no, not as many Google Meets. That takes up too much broadband, and we've got 4 kids at home, and our internet can't handle it. So part of it is understanding that, and then but then communicating back is, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find a balance, because we know it's important to have those connections, but yet we know it's a hurdle if we do it too much and have too many live streams going at one time for students. So we got like 5 of those things that we're going to communicate out, and we're going to continually evaluate. And it's not a perfect process by any means, but we're aware of it. We know that there's some parents with technology issues. that they listed in the survey. So Mike has been so diligent about following up with parents and contacting a ton of parents individually. So we're going to post some resources online as well. So there's some of those, while it's specific issues, it came up more than once that we're still addressing with, and at least going to share that information and do the best that we can to respond to it.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Jeremy?
Jeremy, and it probably goes to Grant too. Do we have any structure on when the students are able to communicate with the teachers so that the certified staff have a break? They're able to shut off and have a little personal time too. I mean, are we trying to give a little structure to the students, having them call or email between 8 and 3 or those things, or are they reaching out to the staff 7 in the morning to 8 at night, 9 at night, whenever they choose to be doing their homework?
For the most part, I would say we try and keep it between 8 and 3:30 or 8:30 and 3:30. However, there are students and families that are posting outside of those hours. And I've really been trying to tell my teachers to wait and look at those posts the next morning and stuff like that, to take time and relax with your family and do your own thing in the evenings and stuff too, because we need that downtime also.
Yeah, we were.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I follow up on that? We were pretty clear when we created our distance learning plan to make sure that we communicated with our families in that plan that teachers will have their normal working hours. And so the teachers are aware of that. And, it's no different than any other time of the year when a kid thinks of a question at 9 at night and sends the teacher an email. Well, it's not required that the teacher in this other model, of distance learning, be involved in their emails at 9 o'clock. That's not a requirement at all. So that was made clear to teachers. And then as well for high school and junior high, we wanted to keep things simple and as routine as possible. So we were keeping our current schedule. So teachers and students both know that when a teacher has a class, then they can check in during that class time. And we were very clear to not create a brand new schedule and confuse everybody. We wanted to just keep things as much the same as they have always been. And I think that helps with that too.
So when it comes to, Jeremy, you talked about internet.
Yes.
Do we know how many families don't have an internet connection? And what are we doing? Maybe this is an answer for Kurt, but a question for Kurt. But what are we doing for those families? How are we getting those lessons plans out to those families that don't have an internet connection?
Okay, so what we've done is the teachers create a lesson in a Google Drive, and then we have one of our paraprofessionals that comes in and copies that lesson from the Google Drive onto a USB stick. And then on Mondays and Thursdays, the USB stick is delivered to the families for the next week. So and then there's directions with the USB stick or flash drive, whatever you want to call it, for the families in order to download the video, watch the video of the lesson, and then they can save their work on there and send it back to school. Then we can download it, correct it, and give them the proper feedback. So we are also waiting for 12 more hotspots to be delivered, and that will also help alleviate some of the issues we're having with families not having Wi-Fi.
Yep, and we also have some families that even have the hotspots, and it's just kind of spotty based on their location. And so we're also giving those families that opportunity to have a flash drive with the materials on there, and then sometimes some paper materials or packets go out as well. And OJ has really stepped up and has been delivering materials not just on those specific days that we have deliveries, but pretty much every day for the past few days. He's been stopping in, what do you got for me? And then he'll go out and deliver that to the families so that there's not a big delay, 2 or 3 days in between when the kid's getting the instructional materials. That can't happen. So OJ's really stepped up in that regard.
And can I add one more thing before maybe Grant has more to talk about the high school? But I want to go back to Kelly's question about office hours, and I absolutely think Jeremy and Grant are spot on in what they said. And it's like everybody in this situation, though, like we've tried to communicate, is about being flexible and giving grace and just doing right by each other. So we do have some teachers who are likely answering some emails at night, and we have some teachers who just need to be, off and just downtime with their family or whatever it turns out to be. And on the flip side, we likely have students that either have to take care of their younger siblings during the day and don't have time for homework, and they might have to get to it at 2-4 because that's in the afternoon, because that's what their circumstances allow. And so on the flip side, our staff is trying to be flexible with them, knowing that every student might not be able to be on their same exact schedule as they had and that we've set up. So there's just a ton of grace and a ton of flexibility that we're trying to embed within our plans, and knowing that everybody's circumstances are a little different. As far as internet, by the way, we have about 2%. I hate to give out the number because it becomes a little identifiable, but I think it's somewhere around 2% of our students don't have internet access. And like Jeremy said, we have those tracked, we know who those students are, and we're working to get them hotspots. And Grant, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. I don't have a whole lot extra to share other than kind of some specifics for high school. So I do want to point out that, communication has been a big theme with the high school teachers, the high school paraprofessionals, and myself. And so we wanted to make sure that right away we were communicating and working together. We had shared planning every morning, and elementary had as well. Shared planning time for people to share ideas and ask questions of each other in a Google Meet. And if they had any innovative ideas or resources to share, they use that time. We both, Mr. Earlier and myself, stopped into that planning time frequently. And then we also met with each department or PLC every day. So we scheduled some appointment slots for PLCs to check in and let us know what's going on and if they had any questions. And then with families, communicating via Messenger with Superintendent Stump's messages, and then our own. We had some specific things for seniors here and there. They've got lots of questions right now and lots of worries. And so we wanted to try to get some of those things out to them right away. And then also with my newsletter, sent one out, my first one in February, and then sent one out the week before we started. Mr. Earlier and I made a video and shared that out just to kind of clear some of the questions. There were lots of questions on what high schoolers were expected to do. And then within the first week, after the first 2 days, I had each advisor check in with students that had at least one absent period, one of those first 2 days. And so they were making calls home and checking in with kids. Advisors are also expected to check in with all of their students at least once a week, and then be aware that if they feel like a student needs to be connected with more often, then they'll be doing that as well. And then as far as attendance goes, Mr. Lidke, Dean of Students, and myself started working today to look at our list of students that first week that might have a larger number of absences and following up with those students. And for the most part, a lot of those were shored up within that first week as advisors talked with the kids, and then they followed up with me or Janice, and we turned some of those unexcused absences to excused due to internet issues or other, family concerns at home. So we're really working to try to get, kids engaged as much as possible, but like Mr. Stump said, offering some grace and knowing that in these circumstances, we have to be flexible. Checked in with teachers on Thursday and did a faculty meeting just to see how things were going. I think for the most part, everybody was saying that things were going quite well. We had a little bit of fun with a virtual dance party right away to start, and had some music going, and then did kind of an SEL, social emotional learning, check-in with my teachers too, and just kind of what song was getting them through the week. So we're trying to, keep some fun going and know that this is a hard transition for everybody. But again, like Jeremy said, our teachers are really doing an outstanding job. And I think they felt from the beginning like some of the work that we've been doing as a district has set them up and prepared them. And some of the comments that we're getting are, right around that same kind of theme is this transition has been pretty smooth. And thinking about some other families and some other students in other districts, they've been really pleased with our communication process, and we'll just keep working through that, keeping things simple and focusing on students. There was a question I saw.
Yeah, Kendra was asking if you follow up with the parents when those kids are absent as well, not just the kids.
Yeah, and I think that was most of that too, is calling parents and also some kids too. So I know that Mr. Lidke in his phone calls today, I know a couple of them at least talked with the parent and then ended up talking to the student too. So letting the kids know that we care, but also helping, working together as a team with the parents to help kids that, may rather be on an Xbox or something else at home. So.
And I can vouch for an elementary teacher with my nieces and nephews. Some of the kids are getting a little happy with the chat, and the teacher said they will be following up with parents if the kids continue to write on the chat during their meetings. So,
Yeah, I'm following up with some students tomorrow morning. But that's okay. It's a great learning experience for all of us and everything. So, and to go back to Kendra's question, I also follow up with the parents when there are some absence issues. I'll typically send an email first, and then I'll make a phone call. And a lot of times I'll get an email back from them or a text back saying, yep, sorry, slipped my mind today, or I'm working, or we're working on it during the evening or whatever. So parents have been pretty receptive of it for the most part.
What questions do you have? Do you have any for me?
I want to wrap this up with a couple points I forgot to make. Also, it's worth noting for our board members, we have had Heather Winter and OJ actually make some home visits too. And as we move throughout this process, I think throughout the state, the topic of conversation about SEL being extremely important, like families are going through some difficult times, so there might be more stress or anxiety at home. So we're still trying. We have a conversation every day about what we're doing, or if we need to do something different. So just to let you know, that's an area we're continuously looking at. It also would not be doing justice to our process if I didn't mention Andrea Kronbach, our community ed director, who is working tirelessly with her staff, both community ed and some paras in their rotation, and doing the emergency care for children of emergency worker and healthcare workers. And I would say, and Jeremy might be better at this, but it's somewhere between 8 to 15 per day that she's working with. And it's become a little bit more stressful now that those kids now are doing work during the school hours. So there's a little bit more hands on deck, but her and her staff have been tremendous. And I know we got an email from a parent because Andrea switched the way that students get picked up and dropped off so parents don't have to leave their vehicle after recognizing, let's just keep the social distance and not bring as many people into our building. Great move, and got great feedback from parents on that, and just really doing a good job being dedicated to students.
Yeah, I would also talk about their staff has just been rock stars since starting our distance learning. They're doing a great job. They'll have one of the 3 staff members working with preschool students, while the other 2, or Andrea herself, so 3 of them will step in and help students with their distance learning. They've set up a schedule for their day, so everybody knows when they're online, when they're supposed to be doing homework, and what work they're supposed to be doing. They're telling parents we'll get as much done here at school, but the parents are ultimately responsible for checking with the students. So I appreciate all of the work that those paraprofessionals and that staff is doing down in the wraparound SAC for the essential workers right now. So they're really doing a great job.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you, Grant. Anybody else have any other questions?
Otherwise, I think Grant and Jeremy are both going to leave the meeting if everyone else is good.
Can you hang on just one thing? Because I did get a text from our city administrator, Clinton Rogers, and he says, incredible board meeting right now. Please know that Kurt, Grant, and Jeremy are doing great leading the district through this. Good job, JWP. So I just wanted to pass that on. Thank you.
Great.
All right. So yeah, Jeremy and Grant, thank you very much for all you've been doing. I know this is a very difficult time, but you guys you're shining through this. So thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll talk to everybody in the near future.
Sounds good. Thank
Yep,
you.
have a good night.
All right. Committee reports. There was an activities meeting since we last met. Is that correct, Kurt?
Yep, and I'll just give a brief overview in those activity. Or Tim, do you have it in front of you? Or are you ready to go?
I had some stuff written down, I think.
You go ahead.
I mean, not to get too specific, but we talked about the Gopher Valley Conference again. I know that came up. The discussion around that. I know Ryan was going to talk to his coaches a little bit more and get a better understanding from them, and see which direction they wanted to go or were okay with going. Just talked about the enrollment for sports again. Everything seemed to look pretty good, pretty positive. That's kind of all I had.
Probably the other two, we did get a request for potentially discussing marching band or adding marching band to our offering. So that's probably on hold for right now. And then Ryan is still hearing back from a possible agreement for swimming to co-op with Mankato East. They said no the first time. Ryan's gone back the second time because we got a student or two that's interested. So he's still on hold for that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from anyone? All right. We'll move on to, I guess there is no old business unless you have something, Kurt, that you want to discuss that's not on here. Okay. New business, strategic plan.
This is just real quick. I got a letter prepared to go out to our community. Again, it's of course, going to be on hold, or it's going to be delayed until we can get people in groups and back together. But we did get the surveys back, both from our students and from our staff and from our community. Bruce has put that together. So I summarized the results into a report, and I'll be sharing that with the community this week. And again, just a ton of highlights and with what's going well. And like I said, I don't want to get into it here, but I think Bruce thought it would be important for us to know that we're still trying to move forward, and it's still going to take place in the next available time.
Any questions on that? All right. 9B, conference affiliation. Was there more you wanted to talk about that, or is Ryan?
Ryan is on, and I will let him discuss it.
Yes, so I wanted to let everybody know at the start of January, JWP with 3 other schools, and now I've just learned 4 other schools received a letter from the Gopher Conference gauging our interest to see if we would like to join the Gopher Conference. And for some background knowledge, we have been a part of the Valley Conference since 2013-2014 school year. And previously, we were a part of the Gopher leading up to that. And like Tim mentioned, I did survey the coaches and directors to get their vibe, to get their thoughts on everything. And I believe in the meeting I said it was 5-2, but if you pull up the letter that's attached in the agenda, you will see what the breakdown is. It was 2 strongly in favor for, 1 moderately in favor for, 2 neutral, and 1 strongly against. And then as update 2, we already compete in 2 sports in the Gopher Conference, that being wrestling and cross country, because we are co-op with WEM. And I also attached some mileage and enrollment comparison that you can see in the letter. I think we do fit very well as far as enrollment and geographically in the Gopher Conference. And I also think it is a good long-term fit for JWP moving forward as a conference. And then if we would join the Gopher, I don't know how they would split it, whether it be North and South or East and West, but they would go 2 divisions. So currently, Kenyon Wanamingo joined this school year, but it's for they approved to join the Gopher this school year, but it's for the 2021-2022 school year. So it's not next school year, it's the year after next. So they would make 9 to go in the Gopher Conference, and then we would potentially be school number 10 to join the Gopher. Questions about any of that?
So Ryan, in regards to the Gopher from the Valley, I mean, we have moved up to the 2A level where majority of the schools in the Gopher are 2A and the majority of the Valley schools are 1A. Isn't that correct?
Yes, in the Gopher, there's more AA schools in the Gopher. So I think there's 5 with Kenyon, or Kenyon is 4. So there would be 4 AA schools in the Gopher with Kenyon.
And then our national rivalries that boundary our school districts, such as Wem, New Richland, Maple River, USC, are all part of that Gopher. Yes, St. Clair is not, but it seems like no matter if we were or were not, even prior to our years when we were back in the Gopher, we were always playing St. Clair anyway in every sport, it seemed like, except for football. But at that time, they were 9-man and whatnot. So I guess I'm in favor of it, and I'm going to back whatever you recommend, Ryan, in regards to this.
Awesome. Yes, but that is correct. There is a lot of natural rivals geographically that are in the Gopher.
That's all I had. Thanks, Ryan.
Any other questions?
So Ryan, back when we went to the Valley from the Gopher, it was because of competitiveness. What has changed then with our athletic department that we're going to be competitive in the Gopher and move back to the Gopher? Because the mileage difference isn't that much difference between, what you showed and that, especially if Randolph comes in, that's a long distance away, because that was on your list. So, I mean, I'm just wondering why would we go back to the Gopher when we left it because of competitive reasons?
Yeah, that's a valid question. A couple things. I think our enrollment has changed slightly since we left the Valley. So I think our enrollment has been increasing since we originally left the Gopher. And then 2, I guess I kind of relate it to school, where if we have a struggling student and not quite understanding the material, we don't lower the level of material for the student. We work with the student to prepare them the best we can for that material and give them the best shot possible to succeed. And I think that's the same way, or that's how I approach the activities and the athletics as well.
Okay, and most of the coaches, like you said, there's some for, some that were indifferent, and a couple that didn't really want to. Is that correct?
There was 3, 4, 2 were neutral, and then 1 was against.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, it's probably worth noting, again, we're already paired in 2 sports, so I'm not sure if those coaches actually vote because we're already paired. And football does district scheduling, so they're not technically part of a association for. And the football probably has changed since we switched conferences before, whatever it's worth. I also want board members to know, I believe it is my and Ryan's intention to put this forward for a vote to officially switch conferences and apply for the Gopher Conference at our April meeting. So if you have questions in the meantime, feel free to talk with Ryan.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, if not, we'll go on to 9C, fiscal year 20 budget update. I'm assuming Matt will discuss that.
Matt's computer, I'm sure he's on. There we go.
Yeah, I just had to unmute myself. I have to work with Mike. I haven't got my computer to actually do this. I always have to call into the meeting, so I just had to find some extra steps here, but everyone's hearing me?
Yes.
Perfect. So do we want to share, should I present, or do you want to present, or should I just talk about it and assume everybody clicked on the link?
I guess you can talk about it and then they can have it in front of them.
Yep.
Okay, I just didn't know for the live feed if that would make more sense or not, but all right. So, some of you have already seen this with the finance committee. I've been, this is only the second one I've done, but I've been trying to do this monthly now as we close out this fiscal year. So, at the end of March, this is just kind of where we sat with our budget, kind of watching those expenditures after the revision. So, as you can see here, I kind of broke salary down because there are some people with different situations. But for the admin folks that are paid July to June, we're 18 paychecks in. So sitting at about 75% of our budget makes sense. And then the teachers are only 14 paychecks in because they get paid September through August. So it's a little different timing with that, but so they're sitting just as fine as well. And then the other areas, purchase services, we're at about 80% of our budget remaining. And then you can go down the line there. I'm not going to read them all off, but and then I did include a new comment column from last year just to see, put dollars to it. So what did we actually spend in the month of March? As you can see, the total spending out of the general fund was $662,000 approximately, mainly payroll. And with this COVID situation now, I mean, these numbers are kind of going to be, they're not going to be comparable to any other year. So knowing that, going into the future when we try to do analysis is going to be fun. But so right now, overall, we have 2/3 of our budget spent for the year with only 3 months to go. There are a lot of adjustments at year end, so even that can be misleading, but I just trying to paint that image. As we go down the line here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but food service, same thing. We're sitting in about that 70% range of the budget remaining. And community service, we're at 73. So everything, if we were closer to 100 on any of these, we'd start kind of watching more closely. But for now, nothing's really raising the alarm there. So anyone have any questions on any of this?
Matt, can you speak to the other
Sure.
item?
This, I'm guessing you're talking about row 17 here.
Yes.
So, part of the GASB changes is that things that used to be in their own fund, like student activities and scholarship, used to sit out on their own, but now we're required to bring those into the general fund. So this is actually the 43,000 includes scholarships that would have never been in there in years prior, but we do have revenue that we're not at a deficit in our scholarship fund. It's misleading, and it didn't even get into the latest budget. So that one, we barely spend any money in that area. in this month. So I don't think that's going to move much from that 43,000, and just knowing next year, we'll budget more appropriately. So that's just one of those goofy accounting things. They like to throw us curveballs from time to time. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, if not, we'll move on to 9D, the fiscal year 21 budget.
Sure. And actually, I guess this is, maybe we should have said assumptions on here, but this is this document. We've finished. This is what we propose should be approved at the next regular school board meeting. So, the start here, the advantage this year, we did know we were getting the 2% increase with the biennium, so we know what we're getting from the state. And then when we went and looked at, now that kindergarten roundup and preschool roundup's done, we got our numbers pretty cemented here. So we're going with a 635 as our student count for planning our revenue. The K through 12 is at 625, and then this ECSE is our early childhood special ed. So that number is a little hard to pin down because that's not a kid. That's hours spent throughout the year. So, but we think that's a good estimate working with everyone. But for actually kids in the seats, we got 625 is what we'll be going with. And that is a pretty substantial decrease from last year. I don't think we're surprised by that, but it is our reality now. One of the things that does help, and I was showing Kurt this the other day, is there's a mechanism in the formula that's called declining enrollment. So when we have a big drop in kids, it still hurts, but there is kind of this parachute where, so we had about 175,000 lost just in the general formula, but we recaptured about 50,000 of that with the declining enrollment. So still not great, but it is a nice thing to have, but that's only a 1-year thing. So next year, if we stay around this area, we're not going to get that 50,000. It's just in the year of transition. But once again, nice to have. So other than that, let's see, property taxes, we knew that. 1.3 here would be. And then
Matt, can I jump?
Sure.
Hey, and again, we worked with our finance committee on their projections, and while they might be a little bit low, we thought we were better off being conservative on that piece of it. And we've got trend data from the state for the last 3 years. And so we've put in a lot of time that, again, that may seem low, but part of it is, again, we're losing a senior class, gaining a kindergarten class. It's like a 7 student difference, I do believe, that also contributes to the low student number. And I'm pretty confident we'll be above this, hopefully by a little bit, but we wanted to be as conservative in our budgeting for student enrollment as we could.
Makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Hopefully it's conservative and not to the point of us doing anything drastic, just a good round number to plan off of. So the rest of this is pretty much unchanged from last year. This is, we're about $1 million in sped aid is expected according to the levy, but that's always subject to change. And then the rest of this, once we got into expenditures, thankfully we're not in a contract year with all the social distancing norms, so that will be next year's fun. But for now, we're pretty locked in there, so once again, made budgeting easier this time around. And I know I made mention, I think it was just at the finance committee, but maybe it was to the full board, but we have actually used a part of the software we haven't used in the past for the payroll and benefits side of the budget, where we were able to roll our database into a kind of a sandbox environment and then simulate a whole year of payroll that way. So it really took out the guesswork and any kind of user error in that side. So, and that's about 75% of our budget is done that way. So me and Wendy have gone through that, and we've even, we're allowed to make corrections, or if come the end of the year, we decide to do something different with staffing, we can go and update that live. So that's really going to be slick, and they even said they're going to update it in years to come. So hopefully that's a tool we can keep using going forward. So other than that, here's our class, getting back to the document, our class size targets. These haven't changed from years past. So taking into our enrollment numbers and using these targets, that's when we're making our decisions there. Rest of it, we don't really have a lot of big things coming up. So we're not, budgeting any huge things. And even this flooring and roof replacement, these numbers are, once talking to Jason about it, these are probably on the high side. Once again, trying to keep things conservative. And the roof replacement doesn't need to be done in 21. So that's we've just kind of kept it on the timeline there. So, and then food service, we work with Taher pretty closely on getting that budget set up. We're not really expecting anything there. I think with the situation, we may be able to do some more flexible things than in years past. So we might be able to get that surplus in Fund 2 spent finally, and then we can kind of go back into let's just maintain status. So if we do get there, we'll incorporate that in the budget. So, and then community service, we are meeting actually tomorrow with Andrea, Grant, Jeremy, and Mike to really round out the budget here on a line-by-line basis. But, trying to keep community service at a break-even is always our goal. And then Andrea, we'll have to do some revenue projections as well as expenditure when it's fee-based, but we'll work through that. And then we just wanted to point out once again, we are nearing for the debt service fund. Some of these bonds are callable soon. So if we have the cash available and feel like it's worth, like this one that's due in a year or so here, 2 years, I should say, we could save about $112,000 or even refinance at that point, depending on where rates are. So just want to always keep these things kind of so we can keep talking about them. Other than that, part of when we're talking to Jeremy, we do have some curriculum possibly that needs to be updated. Those are always larger expenses, so we'll try to incorporate that into the budget. Other than that, I think this document is, there might be some little tweaks between now and the next meeting, but I think it's ready to go. Any questions there?
I will add. Tim, go ahead.
Okay, just a quick question. I was just wondering when you were talking about food service, and this may be for you, Matt, or it could be for you, Kurt. Have we made any plans here if the state decides not to have school for the rest of the year, of how we get money back to like the seniors for money that they have in their food accounts or, anything like that?
I don't believe those discussions have been had yet. I know in the past, if people had a balance over, I think it was $10, they could request that as a check. But maybe there's a way to do it more efficiently. I would have to talk to Sarah on that one, or maybe some of the secretaries to see if they know of a better way to do that. But definitely, yeah, we want to honor, whatever the amount may be, getting those back if the decision to call a school and they no longer have a need to have those balances. So,
speaking of food service, I did want to clarify one thing. So, the food service program that Sarah's currently running, she applied for a waiver. And so all the meals, the 360 meals, are fully reimbursed because of the waiver. And also because Sarah made a really smart decision early on to do pickup sites as opposed to dropping off specifically at people's homes. Because if we would have dropped off at people's homes, we'd had to track if they were free and reduced or if they were a regular paying meal family, and then we would not have gotten reimbursed for those regular meal families. The way we're doing it now, the way Sarah set it up, all of them are reimbursable because we can't decipher, nor should we, target students or parents when they're coming to pick up their meals, whether it's in Janesville, Waldorf, or Pemberton. Sarah also did say, again, the waiver right now is through the end of April, through the end of this distance learning period. And then if Governor Walz does decide to extend distance learning, then I believe the waiver is automatically extended then through the end of the school year.
Right. And typically to apply for the summer food program, you need to be district needs to be above 50% free and reduced. So there's, normally we wouldn't be able to, but there might even be a possibility of continuing it over the summer. That's something we'll just keep our eyes open for. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for Matt?
The last thing that I'll add to our quick process is approve the revenue assumptions. And again, we looked at this before. It's probably a little late, and we'll back this timeline up next year. And then between May, we'll probably get the finance committee back together to look at the budget for fiscal year 21. And we might have one or two of those meetings with our finance committee just to make sure that we've got all things covered and we're comfortable with our budget, and then we'll have that approved. And our June meeting is the plan. Of course, it's got to be approved by June 30th.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments?
I will say the last piece of this, while we did the conservative figures for loafer grade, it's Matt and my intentions that we keep staffing the same as we move forward for next year. And so, like I said, as even with our student enrollment down, that is what we're going into our process with. And then we'll be able to have a better read, like Matt said, with the new finance projections that they're using with Smart Finance with Matt and Wendy. We'll be able to have a better handle of that here at the end of the month.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Anything else? If not, I do want to say that if anybody has any questions on, the distance learning that hasn't been addressed in this meeting, if you could maybe just email Kurt and he could send out an update to all of us based on your questions. I know there's a lot going on and there's probably a lot more questions that maybe after he gave his presentation that you have come up with. So feel free to contact him and then he can send out an update if you have any further questions. Along with that, then I guess our number 10 is upcoming meetings. April 20th is our regular meeting, followed by a buildings and grounds meeting, which will all be virtual. May 4th is our next study session. As of now, it's going to be virtual. We'll see what happens with the governor's if he decides to extend it. And then May 18th is our the next regular meeting, along with finance committee meeting prior to the board meeting. And I know it says in superintendent's office, but we'll wait and see what happens with that. Any other questions, comments?
Say, and I should have asked this when Ryan was on, but maybe Kurt or somebody can ask Ryan this. Do we have any preliminary plan if we're able to go back to school, what was it, May 4th or May 5th, with spring activities has Ryan had, conversations with other ADs as far as trying to get some sort of season in for, softball, baseball, track, or is that still kind of up in there and they're just waiting to see?
As best as I know, I think the state high school, it's all going to come down to the state high school league. And I think they got a couple options of, even if we do come back, which I guess the governor said the other day that those chances are slim. But even if we do come back, they have the option of saying no activities, even though we're back, or they have the option of saying, nope, we're going to have a shortened regular season, a week or two, and then we'll start playoffs on time. Or their third option would be push everything back and do state playoffs in May or in June, my bad. So I guess to answer your question, it all is going to come down to what the state high school league wants to do with their state tournaments, if they want to push them back. And I think, we'll probably be hearing about that mid-April, my guess would be, because they would have to plan sites for state tournaments. And there's just a lot of questions on if the distance learning, because there's ALCs that are planning summer school and summer rec programs have to get started if we're actually going to have those. So I think there's a little bit more push around to make decisions sooner here in mid-April, as opposed to wait like they did at the end of March and let us know 3 days ahead time that the time period for distance learning. So I don't know. We don't have those answers. We'll wait for state high school league, but there, I think, is more of a push to let us know sooner than later.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. If not, the meeting is adjourned at 6:55. Thanks, everyone.